We are going over pages 17 through 20, or Exploration 3, Analyzing Fossil Data. Scientists have gathered a lot of data about fossils. When scientists organize, analyze, and interpret the data, they observe patterns. These patterns provide information about the types of organisms that have lived on Earth. A fossil can provide information about where the organism lived, the type of environment it lived in, and what it looked like. Scientists may also be able to infer how a species moved, whether it lived alone or in groups, what it ate, and whether it raised its young. So coprolites or dung stones are fossilized animal wastes. They may include bones, scales, plant parts that were not completely digested. So question 18 asks, what type of data might a scientist get from studying coprolites? Your answer should include you would be able to tell what it ate, the organism ate. From this, you might be able to tell if it was like a herbivore, carnivore, or omnivore. The fossil record. The collection of all known fossils in their placement in order from earliest to most recent is known as the fossil record. Therefore, the fossil record is the history of life on Earth as it is preserved by fossils. Scientists continue to revise their understanding of the fossil record as they find new information. However, the fossil record has limitations. Not all organisms that have lived on Earth are represented in the record. Many species left no fossils, or Earth processes destroyed their fossil remains. While a fossil record does not contain fossils of all organisms that ever lived, it does provide evidence that life on Earth has been very diverse and has changed over time. Scientists have discovered that some organisms in the fossil record are similar to living organisms today, while others are quite different. So, for example, we know about trilobites from fossils, but no trilobites are alive today. Patterns in the fossil record. Some large-scale patterns can be observed in the fossil record. For example, 95% of all discovered fossils are marine organisms, mostly shellfish. Only 0.012%, or 12 thousandths of a percent, of discovered fossils are vertebrates, or 1200ths. Only 1200ths of discovered fossils are vertebrates. So the fossil record of marine organisms is far more complete than that of land animals or plants. Scientists also observe that some fossils are complete skeletons or remains of organisms. Other fossils show only parts of organisms. Complete fossils are rare because the remains of dead organisms are usually eaten or scattered by predators and scavengers. The remains of organisms that died in water are most likely scattered in the direction of the water flow. Another pattern in the fossil record is that the older the fossil, the more different its body structure is compared to current living things or living organisms. Also, there are many instances where a species disappears from the fossil record, never to reappear. These species are said to be extinct. Extinction is when all members of a species die out. Turn the page. Mass extinctions. Scientists have identified at least 5 major mass extinctions in Earth's history. During a mass extinction, large numbers of species die on different parts of Earth during a relatively short period of time. Scientists identify a mass extinction in the past by the disappearance of many species from the fossil record. The vast majority of all organisms that ever lived on Earth are extinct. Scientists are not certain what caused these mass extinctions. They think, however, that the extinctions may have resulted from global events such as volcanic eruptions, climate warming or cooling, or meteorite impacts on Earth's surface. So question 19. Scientists found many different types of fossils in a rock layer, which was dated at 251 to 299 million years old using an index fossil. In layers directly above that point, scientists found a large decrease in the number of fossils, particularly a marine and insect fossils. When did the extinct event occur? So your answers might be that that the event happened near the end of the time period represented by the layer directly below the layer with the new fossils, which would be about 251 million years. Physical evidence of anatomy and behavior. One reason that scientists have been able to gather so much information about Earth's past is because different kinds of fossils provide different information. Consider the information that can be gathered from trace fossils. Trace fossils are evidence of an organism's activity. They include clues such as footprints, tooth marks, tracks, scratches, burrows, coprolites, and nests. From trace fossils, scientists can figure out how much an organism weighed, how fast it moved, how it moved, and what it ate. Of how many toes, for example, footprints provide evidence of how many toes an animal had and whether the animal walked on 2 feet or 4 feet. By measuring the size and depth of the footprint and how far apart the footprints are, scientists can determine how fast it was moving, how tall it was, and how much it weighed. So, the size and depth of the footprint in the picture from this 3-toed dinosaur indicates that it was much larger than a human, because the footprint is bigger than the human foot. Do the math on page 19. We're on page 19. The actual size of an extinct organism is most accurately estimated from fossils. However, scientists can infer size, activity, and speed of movement of an extinct organism from its footprint tracks. Analyzing trace fossils like this can also help determine if an extinct species lived in groups or was solitary. So question 21, complete the following steps to find hip height, stride, length, and whether the dinosaur was walking or running. So in step 1, the length of a dinosaur footprint, which is the length of just the footprint, of one footprint, which they represent by F, is the distance of the back of the foot to the top of the footprint. So from the tip of the toe to the end, to the heel, to the edge of the heel. Scientists have identified mathematical relationships between the footprint length, hip height, and length of a bipedal or 2-legged dinosaurs. The hip height is 4 times the length of the foot. Therefore, by multiplying, if you know the length of your foot, you can take that times 4 to get the length, how high the hip was. So in your picture, the foot length is 50 centimeters. So if you take that times 4, it'd be 200 centimeters. To identify if the dinosaur was running or walking, you would measure the stride between, or the distance between 2 footprints from the same foot. And you would measure that stride in length. So if you measure from the center of one foot, you have to measure to the center of the next foot. This distance from one footprint to the next footprint made by the same foot, in the example they give you, the stride length is 2 meters. The relationship between hip height and stride length identifies whether the dinosaur was running or walking. So it would be, you take the length of your stride divided by your hip height. So your length of your stride was 2 meters. Your hip height was 200 centimeters, which would be 0.2 meters, and that would give you your ratio. If the ratio of 2 or less means that the dinosaur is walking. 2 to 1.2. If it's less than 2, it indicates the dinosaur was trotting. If it's 2 or less, dinosaur's walking. If it was 2 to 2.9, then the dinosaur was trotting. If it's greater than if the ratio is greater than 2.9, it means it was running. So you would divide your two numbers. So our ratio for us is 1 to 1. So and a ratio of 2 or less indicates walking. So our dinosaur was walking. So then question 22, what can you tell about the ratio relationship between stride length of the tracks and the hip height? Why would a longer stride length indicate a faster stride? It's likely that the taller the hip height, the longer the stride that would be required for that animal to be able to move. So basically, the taller the animal, the longer the stride. We see that in animals today. The greater the ratio between the stride length and the hip height, the faster the dinosaur was typically walking. Or running, because the faster it moved, the longer the stride was. So that all factors in. So that is the diagram they gave. That was the diagram they gave you. So your foot was 50 centimeters, so you take that times 4, would give you 200 centimeters for your hip height, and then this was 2 meters. Turn the page. On page 20, 23 is an engineering question. It says, suppose you are on a class field trip to collect fossil shark teeth from a sandy beach. Which of the following tools would be best for your teacher to take along for you to use to collect the shark teeth? Choose all that apply. You have A, mobile x-ray machines. Use x-rays to see inside things. B, hand trowel, a small shovel with a pointed tip. C, hand sieve, separates particles of different sizes. D, power drill, handheld tools that drill holes in things. So sharks have few hard tissues, so teeth are often the only part that becomes fossilized. And there's a picture of that on page 20. Shark tooth. So the correct answers for 23 would be B and C. Mobile x-ray machine would be too heavy, and a power drill and the x-ray both require electricity, and you might not be in an area that's going to have the space for an x-ray or be able to provide you with electricity so you can plug in those things, and you don't want to have to haul around a big generator for power. So you would only really, and they're not necessary. You can do those things in a lab once you get the samples back to the lab. So a hand trowel, which is used for digging to find digging out handfuls of dirt, and then you would put the dirt or the sand in the sieve and siphon out the sand or dirt, and what would be left would be the large particles like your teeth. Remaining questions. Scientists continue to study fossils, and their efforts have led to many new and exciting discoveries. As the amount of data on fossils builds up over time, scientists can use existing data to make sense of new data. As technology improves, so does the ability of scientists to gather information from fossils. For example, scientists now use scanning technologies to look inside fossils. These techniques have resulted in three-dimensional images of fossils and their structures. Scientists have even found traces of actual dinosaur tissues that never fossilized. As new fossils are discovered and new information is gained, scientists revise the fossil record. Because not all environments were good for preserving remains as fossils, the fossil record will never be complete. Scientists continue to study the old fossils and newly discovered ones to gain more information about the history of life on Earth. So at the bottom, interprets fossils of living species. Not every fossil in a fossil record is an extinct species. Some plants and animal species found in the fossil record are actually alive today and have changed relatively little over millions of years. So like the horseshoe crab is an example. Fossil evidence indicates that the horseshoe crab lived on Earth almost 450 million years ago. So by the time the dinosaurs appeared on Earth, the horseshoe crab had been around for 220 million years. You can still find horseshoe crabs today. They live in shallow marine environments. They are most closely related to spiders than they are to crabs. So if you would look at the picture, a living horseshoe crab is next to the mold of an ancient horseshoe crab. Horseshoe crab are called living fossils because their bodies have changed very little over time. So that's the picture, the fossil and the living one. So question 25, if you compare the horseshoe crab that lives today with a fossil that is millions of years old, what kind of habitat do you think its fossilized ancestor lived in? Explain your answer. So it probably lived in the same type of environment for millions of years, shallow water. The only thing about today's horseshoe crab and ancient horseshoe crab is that there was probably more shallow water available to the ancient horseshoe crab than to crabs today, because our seas have changed and their depths have changed. So, but they both would have lived in a water environment because the shape of their bodies is the same. Just the fossil is bigger than the live one they show in the picture. So that is it. There is not an assignment due today. There are 3 assignments due today, but there is not an assignment I'm assigning today because I want you guys to have time to be able to get everything done and not panic about it. So make sure your biodiversity project is uploaded, that you get that complete and uploaded. Make sure your lab gets completed and uploaded. I know Black Day class, your fossils are in the classroom, but you should be able to answer the questions on the bottom of the sheet. If you can't answer them because I know it says to ask a partner, you can just answer the questions based on your fossils. And that's fine. If you need help with that, just email me and I'll help you answer them. That's perfectly fine. And then as well, your web quest is due today as well. So for Black Day, this would be the 24th. For Black Day, this would be the 24th. For Gold Day, this would be the 25th. So I'm not assigning a new assignment. Just make sure you get everything else done.